So I come from a long history of people. We were raised in our family and taught to heal our people, to love our people, and to continue the work that Dr. Ron Daniels has been doing and that he is teaching us about, to remember where we come from. So for me, I have been working in the criminal justice system for at least 25 years of my adult life. Pretty much all of my adult life I've been working in the criminal justice system, and I was a practicing criminal defense lawyer for many, many years in Roxbury, Massachusetts. Opened my office after I left the Public Defender Agency, where I cut my teeth, helped start the Youth Advocacy Project, which is now a national model for teaching other lawyers how to represent children who are court involved. I moved on and went into private practice and had criminal defense practice and a legal clinic in my law office, and then began practicing real estate conveyance law. And eventually, as a result of my real estate conveyance practice, wound up serving a 2-year sentence in federal prison. And that was extraordinarily painful and traumatic for me, for my family, for my children. I stood in the parking lot at the Danbury Women's Prison and left my 5-month-old son and my 12-year-old baby girl in the parking lot with my parents and my husband. And I walked into this prison, and I had pretty much, over the years that I had practiced criminal defense law, I had pretty much been in quite a few prisons. Certainly just about every single prison. I can't think of one prison in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts that I hadn't been in as a defense attorney. But I had also been in a number of prisons, even way back prior, when our oldest daughter, who is 30 years old, was a baby girl. She was 6 years old when my husband was sent to the federal penitentiaries and served a 10-year mandatory minimum drug sentence. So that was 24 years ago. And so I knew firsthand already what that was like, to drive up and down highways looking and trying to find my husband so that my 6-year-old daughter could remember who her father was. And the federal system takes you all over the place. So my experience with this issue that I'm going to talk to you about tonight, and I know it's been a long day. It's been a long day for me. It's been long years for me. I will never stop talking about this issue. When I walked out of that prison in Danbury, the women came out of the prison and lined behind the fence up on the hill. And they were waving towels and T-shirts, and they told me, "Don't forget us. Do not forget us. Tell our story." And I made a promise to my sisters that I would not forget them, because even in the 25 years that I have worked within the criminal justice system, I thought that I knew everything anybody could know about the injustices, the system, how it works, until I walked into the Danbury Federal Prison for Women and experienced what I experienced over the 2 years that I was incarcerated. And I have to tell you, it was like a kick in the stomach from the very first day that I walked into that prison and I looked out onto a sea of black women. It was heartbreaking. And I was there for 2 years. These women had been there for 7 years before I got there, and were going to be there for another 7 years after I left. Women like Phyllis Hardy, who have been in prison for 22 years. She is 70 years old. 22 years she's been in the Danbury Federal Prison for Women. She's very sick. We are working very hard to bring her home. And she now was just shipped. She fits all the criteria that she could come home. But instead of sending her home, the feds sent her to Carswell, to the medical facility, instead of letting her, after 22 years of a 30-year drug sentence, not murder, not rape, not a violent offense where you just annihilated a whole neighborhood of people. She went to prison for drugs. So these are the reasons why we did that, because when I walked into that prison, as traumatic as it was for me to have gone through the experience that I went through and to realized that I was now an incarcerated person, the stories of these women just overwhelmed me. And the fact that I knew that they were going to be there far and long after I left out the door, I made a commitment that I would use if it took the rest of my life, which it just might do. And I talk about this every single day, from city to city, from coast to coast. I will never, ever, ever stop talking about it. And I don't talk about it. I mean, every now and then, you know, for entertainment, I'm invited out to a white organization and they have an evening of talk. And I go, okay? And I charge them money so that I could, you know, figure out how to get back to my community, okay? I find my community, and I talk to my community because I know there is a disconnect. There is a disconnect, a huge disconnect that we have got to stop bridging the gap with. And the black middle class has closed its eyes to this problem. The black church has closed its eyes to this problem. And it is just, it's wrong. It's unconscionable. It's immoral what we are allowing to happen in this country. And we all pretty much are aware of the numbers. 40 years ago, in 1972, we had 300,000 people in prison. Today, there are 2.3 million. The United States has the highest incarceration rate. This is all stuff that everybody at this table knows. You put every single country in the world together and all of their incarcerated population, and we incarcerate more people than the entire rest of the countries in the world. 7 million people are on probation and parole. I'm one of them. This has created a despair and hopelessness in black communities and communities of color. 1 out of 3 black men is in jail, in prison, or on probation or parole. The collateral post-incarceration penalties, which we never think about. We don't talk about this. Unless you're sitting in a room like this, unless you're talking to Brother Charles Thornton, like I try and do don't try and let a week go by without connecting with my brothers and sisters who I know are doing this work in the streets. Because we have to continue to remind ourselves what we have to fight for. The collateral post-incarceration penalties are just as harsh and unforgiving as the sentences, further blocking our most vulnerable from housing, food, jobs, and education. One of the most destructive collateral penalties we heard Brother Daniel speaking of tonight is voter disenfranchisement. In Alabama, for instance, 34% of black men have lost their right to vote. And let me, Sister Nikichi, my co-counsel, the Voting Rights Act is not a permanent document.
Absolutely not.
We have to vote that in every 26 years. We're not going to have enough of us to make sure that happens if we don't sit up and pay attention. If we don't think this is impacting us yet. If we still have folks that we talk to that think that this doesn't impact us yet, just share that fact with them. I was in Washington, D.C. at a round table at Bread for the World. Brother Charles was there, and our sister LaShawna Etheridge was there as well. LaShawna was a young sister, a young mother of 2 babies, and they sent her to federal prison. That was 20 years ago. 18 years that young woman sat in the same prison I was in Danbury, Connecticut. And she's home now, and Brother Charles made sure she had a job, and she's doing a phenomenal job now running as a staff assistant and organizing formerly incarcerated women, returning citizens with the WIRE program. But she reminded us that the police tactics that have been used historically, I mean, we know about COINTELPRO, and some of us, you know, we know about these things that we know are fact, as Dr. Daniels told us. They're not, you know, just figments of our imagination. These were nefarious and calculated and intentional things that were done. But what we don't think about, that continues today even, are these major sweeps that came through our communities that literally swept out thousands of our members of our community overnight, literally. and they would do it city to city to city. And LaShawna reminded me of that, Brother Charles, Operation Clean Sweep. 53,000 members of our communities overnight swept into prison. So our system of